Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back. We are here today with Jeff Julian. He is the founder of Squared Digital. Jeff, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I am fantastic. So, Jeff, I had you on B2B Growth a few weeks ago, and we talked about Agile Marketing, and I thought, man, I would love to talk about this topic. It seems to be something that a lot of people are interested in. So I wanted to talk about it for the summit. And you were definitely the guy to talk about it. You sent me your book shortly after I had you on the show, and the book is phenomenal. I love being able to say you literally wrote the book on it.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we dive in, can you just give our listener, obviously you're writing books, you've got your podcast, Enterprise Marketer that I love. Can you talk to just a little bit about everything you've got going on?
Sure. So I started out as a software developer when I was 17 and did about a decade of that, built one of the largest technical blogging communities. We had 4,000 bloggers and 100,000 articles. So think about that as a software developer, not a marketer, right? And you have this content empire and you're building voices, building brands for people, getting people known for what they're passionate about. You have to implement strategies like content marketing, but you can't go get books on it because this is the early 2000s. There aren't books on it. And so deploying the techniques that we were deploying during the development, like Agile, for content creation just made sense. And so starting to coach people, coach companies into those early days of blogging using Agile strategies just paired up really nicely. So over that past 5 years, I've really been digging into the marketing space because I see a need. And so that's kind of where we're at. We launched Enterprise Marketer. We hope to grow that to a community like Geeks with Blogs, the development community, over the next few years and see where it goes from there.
So, Jeff, as we were talking offline, we wanted to really use this session to really give folks kind of some practical steps for getting started with Agile Marketing. You did a pretty good job just now of kind of explaining what it is. So for the person listening, they're not familiar with the term. They clicked on this because they're like, Agile Marketing. I've heard of, Agile development, but what's this idea of Agile Marketing? Could you kind of give a comprehensive look at kind of what is Agile Marketing? Like I said, you did a pretty good job, but just kind of reiterate that. And then from there, want to get into some of those practical steps.
Sure. So when I think of Agile Marketing, the term is all over. People are misusing it. People are using it correctly. But it's confusing because Agile was built for software developers. So we think of the development of a product. Yep. And from a content perspective, we're not necessarily building product, but we are building a lot of repeatable steps over time that make up what would be known as a product. So if we were to sell a portion of our, media, and let's say we sold our blog, it would sell like a product. And it would be the number of assets that we created and the value of those assets. So as marketers, we can think of what we're producing like a product company does. Okay. And so over time, that list just continues to get bigger and bigger, and it's kind of like a buffet plate. Your eyes are really big when you get up there, and you have 20 things of crab ragoon and a few different types of rice, and now all of a sudden you don't have any meat on your plate because there's no more room. Yeah. And that's what marketers run into as well, right? We have all these blog posts that we have to write, and now we're looking at video, and now we're trying to do a podcast, and it just becomes overwhelming. We needed a simple solution that would allow us to organize, prioritize based off of what the customer needs, and then give the marketer a sense of time that they can commit to, but it's not overwhelming, and let them start chewing through that backlog that we've created.
I love it. So in getting started with Agile Marketing, the first piece that you talked about was around kind of persona development. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. I think in any of the processes we look at, so let's take on content marketing. The content marketing is create value for an audience. Well, if you don't understand the audience, you don't know what's valuable to them. Yeah. And it's not just like, I want to attract, this particular type of person from this company. It's the problems that they're facing. It's how can I empathize with them? How can I understand what they're going through because I've gone through something similar or something exactly like it. Mm-hmm. And the only way we can do that is to identify those demographics and psychographics and create a persona around those types of people that we want within our audience. And so if you jump into content marketing and you don't have a content strategy, you don't have personas, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're writing to you and not everyone's like you. So the first thing in Agile is we need to understand the customer so that way we can then use that to base what we're building our priority on.
Got it. Okay, so once those personas are developed, another thing you mentioned offline was looking at, okay, how does this kind of Agile methodology, how does it align with content marketing? Can you share some examples of kind of things that folks should be looking at to make sure that everything is aligned?
Sure. So one of the things you want to look at is when you're looking at your Agile marketing approaches, let's look at the backlog. Let's look at the number of things that you have in your queue that you're supposed to be doing. And then when we look at those, we can size them appropriately to see, do we even have the team that we need in place to do this? Do we have the correct training? Are we cross-functional? Have we taken time to learn the skills that someone else on our team has to make sure that we can all work together and pull these items off? And so once we understand that backlog and what's in there, then we can start to assign priority to it. So what is the next most important item on there? And then using content marketing for the example, we have a mission statement in content marketing. Does this item fit within that mission? If it does, then it's ready for work. And so we can sit down and break that item into the work items that needs to happen, and then also see if it fits within that duration we have, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, or a month. Does this item, along with some other ones, fit in there? And so that's kind of that next step in Agile.
Got it. Okay, so I love that idea of kind of zooming back a bit and going, do we have the team in place? Do we have the resources in place to even be able to execute against this? And if not, what do we need to do to get that right first? Because if that's not right, it's going to be this endless circle of us feeling overwhelmed and, I've got so much to do, but you're not zooming out to say, okay, let's see if we can fix this once and for all by asking ourselves the right question.
Yeah. If you're director of digital, you're director of content, whoever that person is that's in charge of your content marketing efforts, if they're spending over half of their time building content and you have a team, they're not doing their job correctly. You really need to stop and pull yourself back and spend time figuring out the personas, who you're targeting, and then starting to block and tackle for that team internally because they're getting bombarded with requests that aren't in line with the efforts that are going through, and then also evangelizing the content you're creating internally to the organization so that way the salespeople know what's going on, customer service knows what's going on. The product marketing teams, you actually might want to know what's being produced in your organization so you can start to get an audience around that built. There's so many things that a content owner, and that's the role that we call it in Agile, need to be doing outside of the content creation. So absolutely, you have to figure out your team, and then you have to go to bat for them.
I was just talking with Alan Gannett. He's the CEO at TrackMaven in another session, and he was talking about how he's seeing a lot of his customers structure their content marketing teams around two different things. One is they're structuring the content marketing team around the stage of the funnel. So they've got folks on their team that are specifically focused on top of funnel content, middle of the funnel content, bottom of the funnel content. Then he's seeing, some other customers focus on specific personas. So we have this, you mentioned earlier, persona development, actually earmarking, okay, this person on our team works on this specific persona. Have you seen a lot of the folks that you're, coaching that you're working with do something similar?
Yeah, so when you align around the stage in the sales funnel, one, most people don't fit in a funnel, right? Mm-hmm. They move around. Their decision-making process is long. It's emotional. It's like when you're trying to buy something at home where you've got to align budget. You've got to align, resources. Can we get more out of what we have at home? And so passing off that information is very difficult for organizations. You can't insert that understanding in a CRM and have the next guy take it on. And that's the whole reason we have issues with sales and marketing alignment, right? Because marketing might know something about a lead that sales doesn't know, and then all of a sudden sales is grabbing the phone and they're cold calling him, and this guy had no interest in buying today, and all of a sudden we're in trouble. So I like to align my teams and my content marketing teams around the idea of the audience, so the persona. So how can, throughout the entire journey, how can our content marketing team work with them? Because if they're a customer and they love our product, we need those stories so that way we can recruit new customers with those stories. The one team should be involved in that. When we have a new customer coming on board and they're feeling pain, guess what? We want to understand that pain. We want to know about it so that way we can start to create assets that alleviate that pain or give awareness to the organization of this pain going on, because we're the ones who love the customer.
Got it.
And so me as a seventh generation entrepreneur, one of the things that I took from my great grandfather was that he would go drive to Kansas City. He owned a general store, and he would buy grain based off of what he knew from his customers. So he would pick out, bags for these people, and he would bring it to them because he knew they needed it, and not because they put the order in. And so he would always preempt those sales to make sure that he always had something for them, because he was the only store in like a 30-mile radius for these people. And that's marketing. That's not entrepreneurship. That is understanding your customer at every stage in the purchase cycle. And so we as marketers need to learn lessons like that from people who have actually done this work and done business for years and years and years, and say, how can we interact with that customer on that ongoing basis to make sure we're providing an amazing experience?
And so by having folks on your team that are specifically focused on the different personas that you serve, the natural outcome of that is having content that's empathetic and that understands, because the person developing that content is intimately aware of the problems that the people that they're writing to are experiencing. I love that idea. This next piece, and really where I want to close this off, because I want to give some real practical kind of how do we get started with this. So persona development being one, making sure that we've got the time, the resources to be able to pull this off. I love the piece about aligning, making sure that you've got resources that are dedicated to understanding these different personas intimately. But then this next step is kind of what does it take to build a backlog, and then how do we get started on the actual work itself? Can you walk us through that part of this process, Jeff?
Sure. So, at home, here's what I do. I always have one of these at my desk, right? And it's a bunch of index cards. And on those index cards, what I do is I write content ideas. So what's the next piece I'm going to create with the enterprise marketing, contributors team? What's the next assignment I can give out? And it's all based off of a story. So the first thing I could come up with is, let's talk about account-based marketing, right? So maybe the title might be an introduction to account-based marketing for the digital marketer. That's great. And a lot of people will take that and they'll run with it and they'll start writing their article. And I say, slow down. I say, there's a bigger thing with that article that we need to define, and that's what value we actually plan to deliver. So the next step underneath that title is I write a little story, and I say, as Jane the marketer, I would like a article, podcast, video, whatever that is, or a combination of those items on the introduction to account-based marketing, so that I can, and then write a value statement, right? I can go back and explain it to my team. Completely different article, then go back and explain it to my executives. And so by defining that, now we're getting our team aligned around this idea of the content that we're creating, the type of content. Yep. The next step is to actually go through and say, if I'm going to achieve that value statement, I need to come up with some individual how-tos or the approach that I plan to take to actually make that value statement happen. And so I'll sit down and write 5 ways that I plan to do that. I'm going to do some research on the definition of account-based marketing. I'm going to put out there some history behind it so it doesn't seem like it's new. I'm going to go pull some quotes from some people who are doing account-based marketing and so on and so forth. And at the end of that, I want to have a piece of content prepped and ready for creation that anyone on our team could take, and it would look very similar no matter who took it on.
Got it.
And then when we have that and we have all those pieces, now we need to get together as a team and put an estimate on that.
Okay.
Because the estimate is what allows us to figure out how big the breadbox is and then know how much we're working on. And it gives our team that ability to have the stress-free, sustainable pace environment where they can create valuable assets, because under pressure, we're all going to create crap, right? 800 words when it should have been 1,600 because we don't have time.
Yeah.
We'll ship it anyway, and no one gets any value out of that. So we put that estimate on it, and we come up with it as a team. And in the book, I talk a lot about different forms of estimating. But once we have that, then it goes back on the backlog, and the content owner says, is this the most important thing, or was this other one the most important thing? And let's say we're going into the beginning of our week, and we're doing week-long iterations, and our team has the ability to work on 20 days worth of work. We can look at that backlog and say, hey, these 2 articles will take 10 days apiece. Let's pull them in and make sure the team can break it out and we have the resources available to finish it. And then we block the team from any other outside disruptions during that time so that they can create those 2 awesome, valuable pieces of content.
Yeah.
So the team goes in, and daily we walk up to the board and we pick off different things like, I'm going to create this piece of content, or I'm going to do the research on account-based marketing, history, or I'm going to go and find the official definition. That's what my job is today. And every day we come back and we pull those tasks down, the broken down pieces of that content, and move them over to a place called in progress, and then hopefully the next day into the complete based off of that original estimate. And at the end of it, we should have a fully developed piece of content that more than one person worked on as our team, and also that we committed to. And so now we can ship that piece of content. We can ship it to compliance. We can ship it to legal, or we can ship it to the CMS and have it go straight out the door. But we've finished the work. And the cool thing about Agile is now we rinse and repeat. We go back to the backlog. We say, okay, this next week we have a holiday on Monday, and so we're no longer able to do 20 days worth of work. Maybe we're only able to do 16. We look at our backlog, we find an 8, and we find another 8, or we find a 5, a 10, and a 1. We pull it in, and then we start work.
I love it. As soon as you said, we block off all outside distractions because we've got clarity and focus around what we are collectively working on together. But so oftentimes we don't put in the time to really determine what's the priority. And so everything seems like it should be at the top of the list. And so I love that you talked about that, because I think, it was supposed to be 1,600 words. It's only 800 words because we had to ship it because it needed to be due, because we've got to keep with our publishing schedule or whatever. So many things that you've just touched on, Jeff, that I think are so valuable. And I think you gave us really tangible, this is how to execute an agile marketing methodology. If there's someone that wants to maybe pick your brain further on this, Jeff, they want to learn more about everything that you've got going on with Enterprise Marketer and all your other projects, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Sure. Reach out on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. Email jeff@enterprisemarketer.com. And then the best way to learn about this particular topic is the book is super cheap in digital form or print form. I tried to keep the price down as low as possible to get the information out there. Me and a few other people, we're kind of the pioneers. And so pioneers always have to do the evangelism, always have to do the education. So we love doing that. So grab the book. And then if you're looking to get your team involved on this, we do offer workshops and other services that will allow us to come in and teach your entire team, and then make sure we monitor and work with you to get that rolled out correctly in your team.
And what's the best way for them to go about finding out more about how they can work with you in that way?
Yeah, shoot me an email, and then I can provide some documents that's tailored to your team and your need.
Awesome. I love it, Jeff. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been super valuable, so I really appreciate it, man.
Awesome.
If you've been getting value from this podcast, you can help us reach more people by reviewing the show on iTunes. Here's how you can leave a review in less than a minute. Open your podcast app and tap the search icon in the bottom right corner. Type in B2B Growth, then select our show. Once you're there, tap the Reviews tab and tell us what you think of the show. These reviews help us out a ton.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.